Welcome to the Den. Welcome back to the Den, everybody. I am Caden Martz, and I am excited to record today. Because this week, well, yes, it contained 16 long, grueling games to watch. There were some bangers this week, some Game of the Year contenders, some incredible plays, mostly catches. As always, if you guys do have anything you'd like me to cover, comments on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, emails, anything, please send it in because I want to talk about what you guys want to hear. Hope you all are doing well. Break has been going swell, to say the least. It's been wonderful. Just got my class schedule finalized for next semester, and it's creeping up faster than the end of this NFL season. So why don't we cover it while it's here? Starting with Thursday night, by far the best Thursday night football game so far this season, and maybe the best game of this season. The Seattle Seahawks at home defeated the Rams 38-37 in a wonderful comeback victory to take first in the NFC. Everyone talks about Sam Darnold over the last few years as a guy who can't win the big game. Me, personally, I said on this podcast before, in prior episodes, Sam Darnold is not a guy you're going to look at as a quarterback you want going into the playoffs. His stat line in this game, 22 of 34, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And I saw this meme, and it was like Sam Darnold choosing who he wants to be on each drive, and one end was like Chad Henne, and the other was Mahomes. And that kind of rung true, but in all honesty, I think while yes, it wasn't just him, it was very so much a team effort, he proved he could do it. And so many people said it could never happen. Does this mean it's going to happen in the playoffs for every game? That is going to be tough over and over again. No, doesn't mean that. But if they can keep getting wins, which, as you've seen this team play, that would not be a shocker to anybody, they're going to have that at-home spot until the Super Bowl. And Sam Darnold at home, with that crowd around him, with this roster playing like it is right now, is a quarterback that I would probably trust with a run to the Super Bowl at least. But it wasn't just Sam. I thought Kenneth Walker, after having a season where he was splitting carries and even on some of those games where he wasn't great, Charbonnet wasn't great, the running back performances from this team weren't always incredible. But this week, Kenneth Walker himself made a great running back performance. Not just on the run game, though. 11 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown is wonderful. But he also had a huge screen pass that got him all the way up to 64 yards after 2 more catches. Kenneth Walker is never a guy you thought of as like this premier weapon. I still wouldn't put him in that category, but I might put him in that Chris Carson level running back. Shout out prime Chris Carson. If you know, you know. But he kind of has a little bit similar of a style, maybe a little less bulky than Chris Carson was. I hope I'm saying that name right. While Charbonnet didn't have the best numbers, 9 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown, he still had that really wonky 2-point conversion, which I don't know who was on the broadcast in this one. Somebody gave him credit for picking the ball up in the end zone. He was not trying he's not doing that on purpose. I think we all know that wasn't really a converted 2-point conversion, but rules are rules, and I can appreciate how the league is going to stick to them, because if they don't do it now, they don't do it later, and it gets a bigger issue, and this can be used as evidence for like, oh, well, you didn't use it then, so why use it now? I can appreciate that they are doing the right thing, I guess, and following their rules, but if I was Sean McVay, if I was a Rams fan, I would be heated after that one. Jackson Smith and Jigba doing JSN things, 8 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. I like AJ Barner on this team. He's such a fun, he feels like he's got an energy, after the game. I don't know if his teammates were hoisting him or if he was standing on the barrier, but that someone must have had a photo somewhere of AJ Barner looking like prime Kobe standing on something, looking like the hero in Seattle. And for their defense unit, we know is incredible. They kind of got sliced in this one. I will say, in the moments when it mattered, when they were already down by 15, I think, or 16, and they needed to get stops, they did it. But I think that it's not as much that Seattle's defense was that good. I absolutely hated the play calling from McVay in the latter half of this game, maybe not in overtime. It was, I mean, how many teams do this when they're up by so much and they have this conservative, like, run it twice and it's 3rd and 6 and they don't convert, something like that, play calling where you have a lead, but it's nowhere near safe. You're away. There's so much energy. Seattle's building momentum, and even after they let up the first touchdown on the Seattle's way to the comeback, they did it again. They had the conservative play calling. It's like, what are you guys doing? But other than that, LA's offense was booming and really, had a statement against this level of defense. Matthew Stafford, almost 30 completions, 457 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Most of those yards going to Puka Nacua, 12 catches, 225 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I know Puka got in trouble for saying something on an Aiden Ross stream. I know it was a derogatory term. Why? I saw a clip of him like joining the bus or whatever, Aiden Ross. Why are you doing that? You know how big of a problem these guys are. Puka has unfortunately been a guy who's been in the news. I know his relationship caused some issues in the press for him before, or his relationships of the past. I'm not sure if they're still dating or whatever. But yeah, stupid thing to do to go on a stream with Aiden Ross. But um, yes, on the field, though, he was a baller. 12 catches, 225 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kyron Williams and Blake Horn, they've been able to make an impact without big numbers. They've been able to come up in big moments or be a guy they can rely on for like an entire drive. Like Kyron Williams, their first drive, and then they didn't come up with points. It wasn't his fault. He got them way down the field. He ended this game with 70 carries or 70 yards on 23 carries, and Corum had 48 on 14 and a touchdown. Excuse me. But yeah, you can take from this game. These are two clear Super Bowl contending teams, and Seattle won this one after their last matchup was very dull and saw both these teams kind of look mediocre, but especially the Seahawks because of Sam Darnold. But because of Sam Darnold's nice performance in this one, you got to look at them as a possible favorite even for the Super Bowl. Next game to look at. This was the Philadelphia Eagles going into Washington. And even after 3 missed field goals from Jake Elliott and multiple errors, like there was a fumble in their first drive, the Eagles did keep coming, keep bringing pressure, and walked away with a 29-18 victory. Jalen Hurts surprisingly was not the problem. I mean, they still did get a win. The problem, they still won, but 22 of 30, 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. He plays a little like not elevation esque. Like he's not elevating their team too much, but he was not the issue in this one. Saquon Barkley also a wonderful game, 21 carries, 132 yards, and a touchdown. You have to love watching good Saquon Barkley football. There was a play where he's getting tackled by 2 guys, and he puts all his weight on one of them. The weight goes off of him, and I don't know how his core is that strong. I would have fallen back immediately. I think 99.999% of humans would have fallen back on that play. Somehow Saquon Barkley's contact balance is absurd. A.J. Brown is becoming Jalen Hurts for sure favorite target again. And it's reasonable with the way he's been playing. 9 catches for 95 yards. Devonta Smith also kind of solid. 6 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown. Goddard had a nice touchdown in this one as well. But for the Eagles, this is a game you probably would have wanted to win by more. But I can't blame them too much because there was a lot of silly mistakes that they pushed aside, kept playing well, and never really seemed like they were in too much trouble here against Washington. For Washington, I had been saying last few weeks how good Marcus Mariota was, how quality of a backup. Well, they kind of proved that in this one when he went down after only having 7 for 14, 95 yards. The game lost all competitiveness. No hate on Josh Johnson, but you're not Marcus Mariota. In all honesty, Marcus Mariota could probably be a top 32 quarterback in this league, and that's not saying too much, but that's saying a lot for a guy who's on a team who loses their starting quarterback a lot. So if they roll with Jaden Daniels and Mariota next year, I would not be surprised if Jaden Daniels goes down and Mariota is able to lead them to some wins. Unfortunately, he couldn't really do that this season, but they've also been getting incredibly unlucky, and they are lacking a good amount of talent. In their backfield, Chris Rodriguez and Ja'Cory Carson-Merritt, neither of them eclipsed. I guess Rodriguez, 63 yards and a touchdown is not bad. Carson-Merritt, 25 yards and a touchdown for him as well. Not a terrible game from them, but not bad for going against the Eagles' defensive line. Um, Receiving wise, I love their roster so much, man. I used to be a big Terry McLaurin fan. I've kind of been falling off that train, but watching him these last few weeks, he's making like one huge catch a game. Traylon Burks only ended with 2 catches for 30 yards, but he looked really good other than like maybe a drop, but he was getting open and getting like really putting pressure on this Eagles defense, which I'm all for Traylon Burks love. I'm a big Traylon Burks fan, but it wasn't enough. Washington just clearly lacked the talent. And if you get a game like this where you get a lot of breaks going your way, you have to take advantage of them, and they couldn't take advantage of nearly enough to beat the Eagles. So next game to look at, this another incredibly fun game to watch. The Chicago Bears, after looking so stagnant in this playoff fight, came through late to take the top spot in the NFC North with a 22-16 victory. One of the windiest games I've ever seen. There's a reason they call Chicago the Windy City, I guess. I want to shout out all 3 quarterbacks in this game. I thought Jordan Love, before he went out, looked very sharp. Their offense was moving very slowly, not really scoring too well, but Jordan Love was operating it well. When he went down, Malik Willis, again, another guy who you can look at as one of the best backups in the league after this one. I know he's came in before and he didn't look great. 9 for 11, 121 yards, a touchdown on the ground. He had 44 yards as well. Like, he proved a real threat and brought another element to this team that they didn't have before on Jordan Love, and it kind of surprised defenses. Their defense aren't game planning for Lamar Jackson to be in the backfield. I'm not saying his arm is that good, but Malik Willis is quick. Dang quick is Malik Willis. And Caleb Williams, finally. A wonderful game for Caleb Williams. I mean, you have to give him the credit. 19 completions on 34 attempts, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Another game where he doesn't start the best, but his clutchness. I mean, this whole roster's clutchness is something to marvel at, in all honesty. DeAndre Swift, 58 yards on 13 carries. Monungai, 50 on 9. Williams also had 30 yards. Caleb Williams, that is, also had 30 yards at the ground. I think that I have to give Packers defense a lot of credit. You kind of were worried about them coming off this Micah injury, but it really did look like the Bears needed the biggest plays possible, which they did end up getting, and the best performances possible to defeat this defense, which most people thought would be cooked without Parsons, and they really did not look that bad. And I'm not going to say that that's the Bears offense, because I do believe the Bears offense is pretty solid. Other things in this game. Hey, Josh Jacobs, we're good. Emmanuel Wilson's here, bud. Without Josh Jacobs in this one, after an injury, Emmanuel Wilson led the backfield, 14 carries for 82 yards, ahead of Malik Willis. That's not a name I've known, in all honesty, but he's just such a large player. He's so much mass shoved into, I'm going to assume, under 6 foot. Yeah, he's 5'10" into that frame, 226 pounds, and he moves pretty quick. He doesn't, he doesn't do anything stupid. He doesn't stop. He moves, upfield very efficiently. So shout out to Emmanuel Wilson for that one. I think finally, looking at this game, I think you'd have to say it's a little silly not to consider Chicago a contender. Maybe after that first game where they lost, and they probably should have had better chance at the end of that one against Green Bay. But they won this one. And they won this one pretty darn well. So again, shout out to the Bears. Also, DJ Moore, incredible game. Incredible final play as well. That was one of the most hype moments I've seen in a football game watching live, personally. Next game to look at. We're going to skip ahead a little bit to, I believe this was Sunday Night Football. The New England Patriots went against the Baltimore Ravens. Got a slightly sketchy win, but the Ravens did look competitive. And that is all thanks to Drake May, a good supporting offense, and a clutch defense in the end. Drake May, 31 completions on 44 attempts, 380 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a not his fault pick. Wait, I might be mixing that up. Maybe it was his fault. Drake May looked good. Drake May looked like a guy who rebuilt himself over this offseason, redefined himself, wasn't just another guy in that pretty solid quarterback class of last year. He did look like and has continued to look like a new man, a new player who just, like, if you watched him coming out of North Carolina, there were a lot of guys who were big on him. I didn't get to look at that tape, but he had some buzz as possibly the best quarterback in the class, and he has definitely proved that so far this season. And there was a certain drive in this game where they slowed down their pace, they slowed down their tempo on offense, and it was just 8 yard gash, 8 yard gash, 8 yard gash, all the way down the field. And then the next drive, that opened up their big play possibilities, which worked really well for this team. Trayvon Henderson left this game early with an injury. Ramondre Stevenson stepped up pretty well, though, 8 carries for 51 yards and a touchdown. Receiving wise, Stephon Diggs has kind of looked a little vintage, but he doesn't look like the same kind of receiver. He's a little less athletic, but he knows that, and he has built his game around just his knowledge of the game and knowledge of being a wide receiver. 9 catches for 138 yards. He's looked incredible. Kyle Williams had a really nice touchdown at the end of this one to wrap up his 2-catch, 46 yards performance. Mac Hollins, 7 catches for 69 yards. Shout out Mac Hollins, just a lovable guy. I remember him on the Raiders. He was just kind of like a name who started getting receptions out of nowhere. Their 2 tight ends also doing good things. Hunter Henry, 6 catches. Austin Hooper, 2 catches, both of them around 35 yards. Austin Hooper at 34. And their offense was able to beat this Ravens defense, which has been beat multiple times this season, but not in this way. Not when they were playing at as high of a level as they were. There was a stupid call. Everyone knows that call should have been, the other way. Marlon Humphrey absolutely tackled, I think it was Kyle Williams, deep down the field. Wasn't called OPI, which was ridiculous. So that could have made the score even worse. For Baltimore, though, you're essentially knocked out of playoffs. Technically, no, but I don't see the Steelers losing out, and I don't see the Ravens winning out, in all honesty. But losing Lamar Jackson is also really, really crappy. I no hate on Tyler Huntley. Another backup I'm going to give credit to as a guy who you could see, leading a team in the playoffs on a possible magic run. But he's definitely not Lamar. He did have a nice stat line, though, 9 for 10 for Tyler Huntley for 65 yards. Derrick Henry was the reason they were in this game for so long. 18 carries, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Zay Flowers played good until his fumble at the end, and Zay Flowers is just so streaky, man. And it's hard to form an opinion on Flowers because you want to like him. You see him in his best moments. You see him lined up against big corners, and he just beats them most of the time. Very sharp route running. But you see him also, he's had some drops this year, and it's hard to give him this credit as some clear wide receiver one in an offense when he does make so many mistakes. DeAndre Hopkins, 4 catches, 41 yards. Isaiah Likely disappeared, I guess. They're just not using him anymore, unfortunately. Although he's going to go to a new team next offseason because they're not going to sign him, and he's going to look great. But Patriots did walk away from that one with a win and probably are going to end up with the number 1 seed in the AFC East, and that would give Drake May a big, big boost over Josh Allen in the MVP race. Next game to look at, quite the boring game. The Saints and Tyler Shuck shucked the Jets 29-6. Tyler Shuck, 32 of 49, 308 yards and a touchdown. But Tyler Shuck wasn't the reason they won this game. That was their front seven. I've been giving this front seven so much credit over the last few weeks, and they deserve it. 8 sacks on Brady Cook, who only ended with 188 yards, 0 touchdowns, and a pick in this one. And poor Brady Cook had nothing going for him. He's had some really rough games, rough defenses to go against over the last few weeks. This front seven held Breece Hall to only 54 yards on 16 carries. I will shout out Isaiah Davis. I think Isaiah Davis, if he stays on this team, he'll be a good RB2 next year. If he moves somewhere else, he'll be a nice, gadget piece or a third down back or something like that. He ended this game as their leading receiver out of the backfield, 4 catches, 452 yards in this one. But yeah, very slow, neither offense could get much going until Juwan Johnson and Chris Olave stepped up. Chris Olave ended with 148 yards, 2 touchdowns after Shuck started throwing the ball deep, or at least hitting on his deep throws later in this game. Juwan Johnson, 8 catches for 89 yards. No catch really looked that much more impressive than the next for Juwan Johnson, but none of them looked bad. He's really hard-nosed runner. I didn't really think about that when you think of Juwan Johnson. He's been such a volume guy this year, and you don't think of volume guys as these rack players, but he kind of looked a lot like that in this one. Taysom Hill led their backfield. I'm not a Taysom Hill guy personally. I can see the appeal in it. He did throw for a touchdown in this one. He had 42 yards on the ground and 36 yards through the air, but how much is this guy offering your offense in reality when you could just have players who play that position? It is fun, though. It is a fun piece. I will say that for sure. They were missing Devon Vele and Devin Neal, who are guys who kind of broke out this season. You felt their impact, especially early in the game. Again, like I said, like they couldn't really get their passing game going too much at the beginning of this one, but you have to maybe think that Devon Vele and Devin Neal missing, that run game wasn't as good. I mean, Audric Estime. Oh, Estime. He's all right in the backfield. I'm not seeing any flashes of a future starting running back from him, but Devin Neal did look like a guy who I'm pretty sure Devin Neal's running back out of Devon Bailey and him, but not a guy like Devin Neal who has shown those flashes. And Devon Vele and Mason Tipton and these guys kind of made up these flashy wide receiver 2 and 3 spots. I do still like Tipton. I think he's a fun prospect. He's a really short guy, but he's really speedy. And he could be a nice. That kind of feels like a receiver that Mahomes would really like because the Chiefs don't want to actually pay or get any good receivers. But he looks solid in this offense. And another solid win for the Saints. Saints have picked up a nice little winning streakish. Or I'm not sure if they're all in a row, but if you're a Saints fan, yeah, your draft pick's getting worse, but your chances of Shuck being that guy are going way up. And I think that's way more valuable because Tyler Shuck is a guy you spent a high pick on. You don't want to move on from your 39th overall pick in the draft 1 year later. And it doesn't look like they have to do that after another good performance from Tyler Shuck. Next game to look at here this week. This was the Indianapolis Colts taking a 27-48 loss to the San Francisco 49ers, who were playing away in this one. Shout out Brock Purdy, man. Brock Purdy, best game I've seen from Purdy maybe ever, honestly. 25 completions on 34 attempts, 295 yards, 5 touchdowns, and just a pick, which was definitely not his fault. Um, and I have to, this was a high scoring one, but Indianapolis, whose defense was looked at as a solid unit in the league, looked like barbecue. Who is this? Jermaine Pratt and Zaire Franklin were barbecue chicken for this offense. I mean, they invested a lot in stopping CMC. When that didn't work, CMC got going 21 carries, 117 yards. Also through the air, he had 6 catches for 29. And after they couldn't stop CMC, the middle of the field was so wide open. And Brock Purdy did a solid job of hitting them. There was a few overthrows in this one from him, but easily did enough with this kind of offense around him. George Kittle has been very dominant the last few weeks. 7 catches for 115 yards from him and a touchdown as well. Juwan Jennings, a guy who proved to me this week why he got punched in the nuts. He was going to go hand the ball to a fan and then psyched her out. That was so mean, but he had a nice game. Did a great job of creating separation in this one. 5 catches, 71 yards and a touchdown for him as well. But this team, it's like, their defense is injured to all heck. So they decided, all right, we're going to focus on JT. JT got nothing this game. 16 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown. His longest run was 7 yards. And I've said multiple times, well, if you can't get JT going, the offense isn't going to work. I've actually thought Phillip Rivers did a solid job. Probably as good a job as most, non-elite quarterbacks would have done in a game like this where all the pressure is put on him. 23 completions on 35 attempts, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. But he's just not a good enough athlete, in all honesty, to lead this team to a win when all the pressure's on him. Him and Alec Pierce did have a nice connection. Alec Pierce is becoming a premier deep threat in the league so far. He is wonderful in jump balls or one-on-one ball. His ball tracking is incredible, and it's just his ability to just let it fall right into his hands is perfect. Obviously, a lot of good throws help with that for sure. Josh Downs, a nice game. Always hit him outside the sticks constantly. There were I think there was 3 plays in a row where he just ran 10-yard outs, and San Fran didn't do anything to stop it. But focusing on the run game worked. They tested Phillip Rivers. I thought he did solid, but he didn't do enough for the performance that the San Francisco 49ers offense put up. Next game to look at, and a real scary one if you're a Bills fan. Bills did get a win, but only 23-20 versus the Shedeur Sanders-led Cleveland Browns. Shedeur ended this one 20 of 29, 157 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Those 2 picks, by the way, not really his fault. One, Quinshon Judkins, boop, let it pop right up. Other one was batted into an interception, which I typically don't put that on the quarterback as much. I thought Shedeur looked really nice. I thought Shador was playing pretty well. Harold Fannon's normally doing good stuff like he is. Unfortunately, you lose Quinshon Judkins for the season, although he has not been very efficient and it's starting to annoy me. Like I kept writing it off as, oh, well, it's all right. They're just giving a bunch of carries. I mean, you keep doing it back to back. You got to stop thinking this guy's so good. But there's a problem when the Browns offense looks as good as it did. This Browns offense that scored 3 points versus the Bears defense puts up 20 on the Bills. And if the Bills keep playing down to their competition like this, I'm not going to bet on them to go to the Super Bowl this year. And like you've seen this Bills team play so well against playoff caliber teams and play so bad against these bottom feeders. They lost to Miami 31-13. Like, what are we talking about right now? If you are Sean McDermott, you know your job's pretty safe, but there are people calling for it. And some fans, some owners, they might be ready to pick up that phone depending on how they do this year in the playoffs. But it is still a win. James Cook did still look like a top 5 running back in this one. 16 carries, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. There was one gorgeous run he had. He had a lane up in the in the middle, but it was covered by 2 linebackers. Schweschinger did his job, forced him inside to the other one. Other linebacker way over commits. Cook takes that, runs with it. It's like a 44-yard touchdown for James Cook. Gorgeous play. I will say shout out Jordan Poyer, shout out Greg Rousseau, and shout out Joey Bosa. But other than that, again, this defense was horrendous. I would like to say that the Browns are just, their offense just played good that day. How many times have we seen this Browns offense be able to get nothing? We just talked about the 49ers. 49ers held the Browns offense very well. It's another team that kind of plays down to their competition. Raheem Sanders, the backup, did a solid job coming in for Quinshon Judkins, 11 carries, 442 yards. But yeah, Bills did get a win, but Bills, you got to stop doing that. You got to stop playing down the competition. Next game to look at, probably a huge shocker for anyone who's been following football the last few years. Tennessee Titans moved to 3-2 with a 26-9 win over who? Maybe the Jets or maybe like the Dolphins. No, it was the Chiefs. Chiefs moved to 6-9, 1-6 away from Arrowhead. Man, how has the league changed so much? Our stinker of the week is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs offense for leeching off the back of Mahomes for years and years and years. Gardner Minshew left this game, I'm pretty sure, with an injury. He didn't do much while he was here. Chris Oladokin, he looked all right. It was, cool to see a guy kind of try to play like Mahomes back there, but doesn't have the arm talent. And he did move pretty well, but he doesn't have the pocket presence to move like Mahomes. He obviously does those things with poise. They couldn't get the run game going because they didn't have the threat of Mahomes passing. Xavier Worthy, Isaiah Pacheco. Actually, Pacheco did have a solid game. 6 catches, 441 yards for him. Hollywood Brown, Juju. These guys just look like average receivers without Patrick Mahomes throwing the football. Especially Travis Kelce. Only 1 catch on 4 targets for 6 yards. Like, that's your league's top Pro Bowl voted player, by the way. But for the Titans, this Chief defense has been credited a lot this season. But every element of this Titans offense was rolling. Cam Ward, a guy who, I've seen some things talking about how at one point he was 7 touchdowns for 6 interceptions this season. But this game, he was real nice. 21 completions on 28 attempts, 228 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him. That's a very nice game against a defense that was seen as very nice. Running game wise, Tony Pollard, 21 carries, 102 yards. Again, continuing to give himself a chance to continue to have a real NFL job for the future. Tajay Spears, 13 carries for 52 yards for him. He was a nice second option. If this team can get a nice O-line in the draft, which they so desperately need, this can be a nice running back tandem. I believe in the future that could help Cam Ward succeed. I do think that receiver and O-line are issues you need to address immediately. Maybe running back and tight end, not so much for this offense, which is good if you're a Titans owner or Titans coach, because you definitely need to address those other two. Eric Iomanner, Chiga Conquo, Chimere DK, Van Jefferson. These guys, just kind of existing in this offense right now, but they're getting minutes and they're doing enough, especially in this game. They did do enough. But yeah, crazy to see where the league is at right now, where the Titans beat the Chiefs 26-9 in the Big 25. Next game to look at, the Chargers defeated the Cowboys 34-17. with Justin Herbert playing, again, as good as I've ever seen this kid play. 23 of 29, 300 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Talked about this last week, how Dallas defense was seen as super good for a week or two. Then you kind of realize they weren't there. I think their D line is still something you can consider as a nice unit. Amara and Hampton, 16 carries, but only 85 yards on those, which is still a solid game. Kamani Vidal, 5 carries for only 11, but their secondary is just not nearly talented enough to hang with Herbert. And I'm saying Herbert because I think their weapons played very good in this one, but they just executed jobs with a perfect throw every time. Quentin Johnson, 4 catches, 104 yards for a touchdown. Trey Harris, 4 catches for 54 yards. Keenan Allen, 5 catches for 44. Ladd McConkey, 4 for 43. And like they didn't, it wasn't them doing anything special. Defense just could not handle, they didn't have perfect coverage, which sometimes you just need perfect coverage. Even that's not enough sometimes, but they didn't have nearly that for sure. For Dallas's offense was solid in this one. Dak Prescott, solid again. 21 completions on 30 attempts, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns. Javonte Williams and Malik Davis are not doing enough for them in the run game, which is frustrating because you have such a productive passing unit. That run game should be something that teams, aren't ready for, and it should kind of sneak up on them. And after Javonte Williams started this season so hot, you could have predicted him to be big for them, but he's kind of been a big reason they haven't been succeeding as much. Yes, their O-line is not helping. And I guess I'll say their run game is a big reason why I haven't been succeeding as much, because it's not really too much on Javonte Williams. Obviously, rushing yards are most of the time an O-line stat. George Pickens, 7 catches for 130 yards. CeeDee Lamb, 6 catches for 51 yards. George Pickens, one of the prettiest go routes I've ever seen in my life. Off his break, didn't really beat his corner by too much. Does a little stutter step, gets a little bit of separation, extends his arm just enough to not be OPI, and then a gorgeous ball in the end zone thrown to him by Dak is caught for a touchdown. But yeah, if Dallas has had a run game, I'm sure this game would have been different, but they didn't. And the Chargers executed on offense, did enough on defense against a solid offense from the Cowboys, and got a win. Next game to look at, this is going to be our Game of Thrones game of the week. That means the most boring game of the week if you don't know. And the Vikings won 16-13 versus the Giants. A little bit of a tank bowl, but not really. J.J. McCarthy looked really good when he was playing. 9 for 14, 108 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick that, again, wasn't his fault. He goes down with an injury. Really lame, but still good to take from it. As we've been talking about, if J.J. McCarthy, it just requires J.J. to be good these next few weeks ending the season, and you can give him some trust going into next season. And he's still giving that to you. Maybe not the most elite from this game, but still a solid performance for a guy in J.J. who we just don't really know too much about in terms of good football. Jackson Dart ended this game with 33 passing yards. Minnesota's defense was the reason they won. New York only scored their most amount of points in a play off a touchdown, off a forced fumble, on the quarterback after a really hard sack by Brian Burns. Aaron Jones, okay, running the football, 21 carries, 85 yards for him. Justin Jefferson was getting slammed with targets early in this game, and I love to see it. I've been talking about why is Justin Jefferson not getting enough targets. Only 8 in this one, but he did have 6 catches for 85 yards. And they just didn't have to do too much. This game was so slow. This game was unbelievably slow. Part of that will be credit to Tyrone Tracy, who had 71 yards. He looked like a nice piece for this offense. Devin Singletary was all right, 11 carries for 47 yards in this one as well. But yeah, one of the most boring games I've seen this season. And it's so funny to watch Jackson Dart run around in the pocket because his O-line isn't helping him at all, and look downfield to Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton and Theo Johnson, who, not saying these guys are bad by any means, but if you don't have a top quarterback, these guys really aren't going to perform that well, especially against this Minnesota defense that was constantly hitting Jackson Dart with pressure every single play. Next game to look at, one of my personal favorites. Every time the Panthers get a win, it's one of my favorites. Carolina won 23-20 versus Tampa Bay in this one. Bryce Young, I'm ready to say it. He's here. He's here, and this is going to be the Bryce Young that we get for the rest of the season and into the playoffs when we beat the Bucs again in 2 weeks. I hope I did not just jinx it. He went 21 of 32 in this one, 191 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's just strung together so many performances where his offense isn't the reason around him isn't the reason they're winning. Rico Dowdle, 9 carries for 29 yards. Chuba Hubbard, 6 carries for 27 yards. Our offense looked very stagnant at points because Every time we got scoring opportunities, it was because Bryce Young made a miracle play. No, he didn't do it every single time, but how many 3rd and 18s did we convert on? Like, I mean, I'm not going to ask him to so any much more. Tedero McMillan continues to be his favorite guy in that receiving room. 6 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. Coker continues to look like end of last year's Coker. He's kind of doing that again this second half of the season. I was a little worried, like, why aren't we getting that same Coker? He's coming back a little bit this year. 3 catches, 47 yards for him. Mitchell Evans had a nice grab in this one. He ended it with 3 catches and 23 yards. So, yeah, it is a great time to be a Panthers fan. But for the Buccaneers, you started the season maybe one of the top 2 seed in the league. You got to win versus a Seattle team earlier this season. That looks really good. You almost took the Patriots at home. It was a close one, though. Now you're 7-8. Now your next 2 games are must win just to barely crack the playoffs. And this is not 7 seed crack the playoffs. This is you got lucky being in a bad division and crack the playoffs. In this game, where if you were asking any fan of any team, is Baker Mayfield a top, or earlier in the season, if you're asking someone, is Baker Mayfield an MVP candidate right now, going to go into Carolina and not lead this team to a win in a must-win playoff situation? People are going to say no. Of course he's going to do that. But this has been a different Baker Mayfield. I actually thought he wasn't terrible in this one. 18 of 26, 145 yards and a touchdown, and the pick to end the game, which was a miscommunication. But this defense was not good this game. This Carolina defense has not been good this whole season, and they were especially not good in this one. And I'm confident that another team going against Carolina, would have tore through this defense. That's why I'm terrified for next week against Seattle, which is going to be something to watch for certain, but we like to play up to our competition. Bucky Irving, a guy who had a lot of hype coming out, last year, got hurt this year. Their backs behind him and Sean Tucker and Rachaad White looked all right, but they've given confidently this backfield right back to Bucky Irving, and he has not returned them kindly. 19 carries, 71 yards. Like, he is doing solid, and out of the pass game, he had a few. Never mind, I must be thinking of Rachaad White. But he had a few nice plays where he turns maybe 0 yards into 5, but you're not getting performances from a running back that you should give money to. That's for certain. And in all honesty, if 2 of these guys are free agents out of White, Tucker, and Bucky, you can let 2 of them walk and just keep one, because I don't think you're getting anything more from Irving than you're getting from Rachaad White or Sean Tucker. Next game to look at here, and another blowout this week. Bengals won 45-21 over the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Bengals just dominated this one on offense. We've seen this a few times from this team so far this season, and we've seen their defense not come up as much. Well, when you're going against a Dolphins team starting Quinn Ewers, that's not too much you're going to have to worry about. Devon Achane, they did focus on. He still had a good game, and I can't blame them. Devon Achane's insane, but 15 carries and 81 yards and only 9 yards through the air is not going to be enough to beat this Bengals offense, who was firing on all cylinders in this one. I will say Miami did a solid job of stopping Chase Brown. He only had 66 yards and a touchdown in this one. P. Ryan only 25 yards and a touchdown for him. Chase Brown did do really good out of the receiving game, though. But yeah, Joe Burrow was unbeatable in the second half in this one. Early in this game, it kind of seemed like Miami, and I've seen this a few times from Miami, where first half Miami defense looks like a very competent unit in the league, but not at the end of this game. Joe Burrow, 25 of 32, 309 yards and 4 touchdowns for the kid in this one. Jamar Chase, 109 yards of that. T. Higgins, 53. Gesicki, 35. Gesicki revenge game. He didn't do too much, though. Love to see Gesicki doing good. But Bengals sit 5-10. Miami Dolphins have a better record than this team right now. Shout out Quinn Ewers for not looking terrible earlier in the preseason or something, or maybe early in the season when Tua went down. He had an awful, awful stat line, but this one wasn't terrible. 20 of 30, 260 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 not so great picks, but he looked about as good as Tua did. And is that really saying too much for Quinn Ewers? No, that's kind of just, what are you doing with Tua, man? And I saw a report, he's expected to get cut. This guy that you had an entire season dedicated to tanking for, Tua Tagovailoa. And now you've got Quinn Ewers playing just as good, if not maybe even better than Tua has done this entire season. It's rough out here if you are a Dolphins fan, but you have to move on. And I'm sure they're probably happy they have a chance to get somebody else soon. If you want to go with some guy in the second round, I say go for it because Quinn Ewers cannot be your starting quarterback next year. Next game to look at, and another wonderful game from this slate in the NFL. Last week, the Denver Broncos beat the Green Bay Packers at home. Looked like the contender in the AFC, took the number one spot in the AFC. But the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence's hot streak came into the Mile High Stadium and got a 34-20 victory. Jaguars move to 11-4. How about those Jags, man? As an Orlando, Florida native, I love to see Jacksonville 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-game winning streak for the kids out of Duval. Trevor Lawrence, 23 completions, 36 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I said some bad things about this team. I'll admit it. I said that Jacksonville was not a playoff-ready team. I said that with Trevor Lawrence at your helm, from what I've seen so far this season, he's not going to be able to lead this team, especially if they go against a great defense like Denver. Look at me now. Holy cow, this guy was tearing through the Broncos with help from Parker Washington out of Penn State. He will be our stud of the week this week. 6 catches, 145 yards for the kid, and a touchdown as well. And he just made so many 10-yard grabs where he just bounces off tackles like a Trey McBride kind of truck, and he just kept running, and nobody could tackle Parker Washington this one. Brenton Strange and Jacoby Myers also had solid ones, both over 4 catches. Jacoby Myers 45 yards and Brenton Strange 39 yards in this one. But if you're Denver, and if you're a Denver fan, this is a little concerning. You wanted to be a team that was feared going into the playoffs, that seemed unbeatable even by the best squads. And after that Green Bay game, it seemed like you had that aura, but Jacksonville just came in and wiped that out. I don't think Bo Nix was bad. I think that Bo Nix is a very competent starting quarterback in this league, even a playoff Super Bowl caliber quarterback from what we've seen from him so far. But if the weapons keep being this inconsistent week to week, they're not going to be able to string together 4 good games where they can help Bo Nix, who's going to play all right, they can't get to that Super Bowl. I mean, how many times have we seen it? One week, these weapons are making incredible catches. You can throw it up to Cortland Sutton or, Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant, and someone's going to give you a great performance. I think RJ Harvey had one of his better weeks, only 9 carries and 50 yards for him, 4 catches or 71 yards. But when the rest of your receivers just are dropping easy balls, Cortland Sutton, 12 targets, 6 receptions. Pat Bryant, 8 targets, 5 receptions. Evan Ingram, 4 targets, 2 receptions. You cannot beat high-level teams and high-level defenses, which I can safely say the Jaguars are a pretty high-level defense, as we've seen them beat a lot of teams thanks to their defense so far this season. I mean, they are probably the best team at putting the opposite team at 20 points. I think they did the exact same thing last week versus the Jets. But yeah, I'm not expecting Bo Nix to do more than this. 28 completions, 47 attempts, 352 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. He's not going to, you can't expect Bo Nix. You really can't to make these receivers look like Mahomes makes his receivers look. Like Josh Allen makes his receivers look. Holy cow, Josh Allen has 0 help in Buffalo. It's bad. But yeah, it's very concerning for the Broncos because their weapons are so iffy. And also their defense, you've seen Trevor Lawrence in weeks before look very weak against some weak defenses. And even though, he's playing hot recently, you're hoping, if you're a Denver fan, you're able to cool him back down because this defense is so highly touted. But they kind of got burnt. We've seen their cornerbacks be an issue. Other than Pat Surtain, we've seen these guys be an issue in weeks prior. But, they really were an issue in this one. Riley Moss is just not that good, unfortunately. I'd love to say Riley Moss is like that. Unfortunately, he's just not. He actually came away with a sack and 2 TFLs in this one, but Jaquan McMillan wasn't playing terrible. Hufanga wasn't playing terrible, but these guys were just getting beat by a Jaguars receiving room who you're not looking at as one of these top units in the league. Next game to look at, another kind of boring one. This was the Falcons versus the Arizona Cardinals. This was home to a wonderful play. Shout out Michael Wilson for the Jermaine Kearse Super Bowl type of fumbly catch. That's going to be our play of the week in this one. It was a deep, I think it was 40-yard pass, I believe. It was wonderful. I guess you could say it's tied for play of the week with Kenneth Gainwell, who had a very similar one. He got tripped up on a defensive pass interference, tracked the ball while he's laying down, caught it, stood up, and got into the end zone. Before the actual game, Falcons did get a 26-19 victory over the Cardinals. Kirk Cousins continues to look okay. 21 completions, 35 attempts, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. But he wasn't the reason they won this one. I think their two-headed monster, you could call it, in the backfield was Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, both with 16 carries. Algier outran him by 3 yards with 79. Bijan had 76. But Bijan through the passing game was incredible. 7 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts, 7 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown for him as well. I have to say, if you're playing Atlanta and you're not game planning for Bijan Robinson, going out of the backfield and you're not essentially putting a spy on this guy, he's going to break off for 10 yards at least, even if you throw it to him behind the line of scrimmage. Like, he's on that CMC level at this point. You have to say he is there. Atlanta's whole idea, I guess, this game on defense was bend, don't break. It was very clear and obvious, and it worked out good for them. Arizona missed 2 field goals in this one. If they made those, obviously this game is way closer. It's a 25-26 victory, only for the Falcons, and who knows where this game would have went if they only needed a field goal in this one. But there's a reason they couldn't break that Atlanta defense, and that's Jacoby Brissett, excuse me. I'm not a Jacoby Brissett hater, but I'm definitely not a Jacoby Brissett enjoyer. Brissett, 16 of 31, 203 yards, a touchdown, and 1 pick. And in this game, against a Falcons defense who has some bright spots and has some clear low spots that you can expose, Brissett just didn't do that. Not nearly enough, at least. Like, why? I appreciate that he's getting, that 31 attempts is the lowest he's gotten, maybe over his entire starting, semester so far this season. But, like, why are people saying Brissett is that good? They're letting him throw the ball 40 times a game. Of course, he's going to end with solid stat lines. Michael Carter, 11 carries. Sorry, Jacoby Brissett is being a detriment to this offense. He's missing throws. And, like, there are so many other quarterbacks in this league with that if they had Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, and Marvin Harrison Jr., most of these guys wouldn't walk out with under, 3 catches. Freaking Michael Wilson, 2 catches. Marvin Harrison, 1 catch. Trey McBride, only 4. Like, what are we doing right now? He did spread the ball out, though, and this is home to our Know My Name player of the week, Elijah Higgins, 6th-round pick in 2023, also out of Stanford like his teammate in Michael Wilson. He came away with 7 catches for 91 yards. I guess Brissett chose to like him this one. He's a tight end who's a little bit more athletic. That's been growing in popularity so much this season. Because you get your new guys like Brenton Strange who are a little bigger, but you also get your guys like Oronde Gadsden who could be receivers essentially, and those have been working really well so far, and that's kind of what Elijah Higgins can give you, even with some size on his bones there. But yeah, Falcons walk away with a win in a pretty useless and boring game because guess what? The Falcons don't have their pick, so they're just kind of helping out the Cardinals and hurting the Rams, I guess, for the future. Next game to look at, and kind of a shocking one when you look at the scoreline. Texans beat the Raiders 23-21. What? Raiders team that I've said is confidently the worst team in the NFL. Only a 2-point loss to the 10-5 Texans. Can we talk about how the Texans were like, weren't they 2-5 or something earlier this season? Shout out the Texans. But in this one, it really just looked like the Raiders came to play a good game. Geno Smith, 16 of 23, 201 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have a mistake in an interception in this one. Ashton Jeanty, though, 24 carries, 128 yards, and a huge 60-yard bomb to him where he also broke a tackle and scored a touchdown as well. And this team just, like, very nicely, very, very nicely gashed this Houston defense, which is looked at as one of the best units in the league. For sure. You have to look at Houston defense as one of the best. And, like, I hate to be a Bills hater right now, but the Bills couldn't gash Houston like the Raiders could in this one. I think that's a little scary if you're a Texans fan for certain going to the playoffs, but they did survive. Stroud did do enough. I would like to see a little bit more elite kind of play out of Stroud. 23 of 35, 187 yards, and a touchdown from him. Jahar Jordan, I think that's how you say his name. Jahar Jordan, 15 carries, 53 yards. Nick Chubb, 6 carries and 33 yards, mostly thanks to a nice little run he broke off. In this one, not great, especially when your offense, no part of your offense is moving at that high of a cylinder in this one, which why the score was so close. I feel like Houston really had a lot of chances to put up more points against this Raiders team, but kind of entirely thanks to Max Crosby, they didn't. His stat line wasn't anything crazy in this one. Only six tackles, three solo, and two tackles for a loss. But he was everywhere on the field in this one. There was a play where it looked like he jumped off sides, but he was just that on time. Got to the backfield, and it was a handoff, and it still was like a 5 or 6 yard loss. But still a little rough for the Texans, but it is still a win. And if you're the Raiders, you get to see a nice performance, and you get to keep a high draft pick. Win-win for both teams, I guess. Final game we are going to look at this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers walked away from Detroit with a 29-24 victory over the Lions. I want to talk about the final play of this game. Oh, maybe not just final play of this game. There were a few offensive pass interferences late in this one that, were controversial. The first one, it's a rub route. Isaac Tesla's supposed to run a slant, get in the way a little bit. You can't run into the DBs and push them and move them forward. That's illegal. Yes, that one was the right call. And final play, I'm not sure. I do like that they did call it a touchdown. When Amon-Ra pitched it to Goff and they didn't blow the whistle. Although, if you're going to make a precedent to blow the whistle when someone's not tackled, maybe you should call that more, referees. But I did say it's stupid to speculate about this stuff. So maybe I should just talk football. Aaron Rodgers played pretty solid in this one. 27 completions on 41 attempts, 266 yards, and a touchdown for him. Continuing to be probably the best version of Aaron Rodgers we've seen since some of his, better days in Green Bay. And with this roster around him, that's not helping him out too much, except for in this game. They're very helpful. He's looking like he's going to give the Steelers team at 9-6 a chance in the playoffs. Would it shock me if they end the season 9-8? Not at all, because it's the Steelers, right? But when they get to the playoffs, I'd probably give the Steelers team more of a chance to go a little further than I would say for most Steelers teams of the past. Jaylen Warren, a guy who has kind of been getting outplayed by Kenneth Gainwell definitely been getting outplayed by Kenneth Gainwell these last few weeks, had a monster game against Detroit. And this is kind of just exposing Detroit's issues with having a roster made of skeletons and frail players who are all getting hurt. No, I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm just making a joke. But yeah, Jaylen Warren, 14 carries, 143 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's a monster game. Speaking of Kenneth Gainwell, also a wonderful game. 9 carries for 50 yards, but that's not even his best attribute. Through the passing game, again, led this roster in receiving yards, 5 catches for 78. Adam Thielen getting in the action, 4 for 49. DK Metcalf, 4 for 42. Darnell Washington had 3 for 36, but he also had a pretty bad fumble in this game. But Detroit just did enough. I'm sorry. Detroit did not do enough, but Pittsburgh just did enough. And Pittsburgh got out to a lead. And Pittsburgh's not a team that, they can get to a lead, they can let up a score, and they're not a little nervous. They're going to punt the ball and let up another one. But this one, it didn't seem like they were nervous at all. They're on offense. They seemed calm, even with the very slim lead, and they kept scoring and scoring near the end of this game, although because it started pretty slow. But they ended up being able to look like an offense that was very threatening to the Lions. And this is kind of why the Lions aren't going to make the playoffs this season. They just haven't had a defense that can, keep up with these high scoring, or maybe that can help their offense a little bit out in these high scoring games. Because this one wasn't as high scoring because Pittsburgh's defense has been playing very solid, even against a Goff who's looked really good. He had 54 attempts. He completed 34 of those for 364 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did look pretty darn airtight in this one. But Pittsburgh absolutely shut down the run game. Nothing going on the ground. 11 carries between Montgomery and Gibbs, a total of 16 yards. This Detroit team has kind of found an identity in their run game. I guess I'll call it their running back game. And only half of that showed up in this one with Jahmyr Gibbs getting 10 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown, but only 2 yards on the ground. You're going to need more of that from this offense that's had to carry this team so far in, this season. And you can only do that so much, especially when you're playing a defense as good as the Steelers defense has looked as of late. Jameson Williams, 70 yards. He's continued to look really good. Khalif Raymond, I swear this kid has been on this team for so many years. But he did have a nice game. 4 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown for him as well. It's just, it's frustrating if you're Detroit because if you didn't have these injuries haunting you this season, you would be a lot better. And that Goff is playing some of the better Jared Goff football we've seen in the last few years. and it's kind of going to waste. And you really, really want to hope, if you're a Detroit fan, that you're going to go into next season, getting the same golf, getting your guys healthy again, maybe drafting some more defensive pieces or making some signings in the offseason. Losing Brian Branch is a big one. Like, if they can do that, I'm not too concerned about this team in the future. I think they are still going to be a possible deep playoff, maybe Super Bowl contender. That's all we have for y'all this week. Had a very good time filming this episode and watching football this week. Of course, I'll be back here in 7 days to bring y'all another episode of The Den. Please like, comment, subscribe, any of that stuff you guys want to do. Remember that I love you guys, Jesus loves you guys, and you are all very valuable to at least somebody in your life. Have a good one, and I'll see y'all next week.